That's really good. Yeah. Okay. So we are.
Okay, it's the turn is like summer, fall of 1942.
42. So this is pretty much El Alamein and the drive on Stalingrad and the rest of the world, right?
Yes, yes. So for that reason, the Allied command asked Mihailovich to undertake a sabotage operation of the railways in Serbia or in
Right.
Yugoslavia. You know,
Right.
in any case, he's busy doing that. On the other side, we have the situation in what would you call the green provinces,
Yeah.
yeah, which is basically the puppet state of Croatia, plus
So
Montenegro and Slovenia.
So what part of this is Italian? I guess everything with the green counters are the Italian spaces.
Yes,
Sarajevo was part of Croatia, I assume.
yes, yes, as in the complete Bosnia, but honestly, the Italians mostly took over the parts they controlled, and these parts cannot be considered fully like part of Croatia at that time,
Right.
because
Right.
obviously Serbs had their rights and everything, and it's very much different than the German zone.
Yeah, it is actually. From what little I could tell from the readings, it seemed like it was. I don't want to say mellower than the Germans. The Germans were really intense. I don't think the Italians were anywhere near as authoritative in their approach. Is that the right word to use?
Yeah, I would agree. Italians would be, first of all, the Italians had a much difficult zone to control.
Yeah, they sure did.
Because their zone was completely mountainous.
Oh yeah, and then they didn't really have. I don't think they had anywhere near the troops. Well, they certainly didn't have the capable. Well, actually, they're probably about the same as the Germans at this point, because I imagine the Germans probably pulled out a lot of guys by this point, because this is post initial revolution, right? So this is the end of the. What was the first Serbian country called? What they call it?
Well, first of all, Serbs, the Chetniks, don't use revolution. So it's
Right.
if it's revolution, it's more of a communist thing.
True.
And also, it's not a revolution per se; it's a Soviet republic.
A Soviet republic.
Yes. So you had a Soviet republic in Užice.
Zicha, okay.
Yeah. Then you had the Soviet republic in the north of Montenegro.
Okay.
And when that collapsed, you have a Soviet Republic in Bihac, which is in the Krajina province, way over to the west.
That's actually kind of funny, because I think that the historians I read actually kind of, because the Serbians had a little bit of was it a republic? I mean, what did you call that? Because they had a state going on there for a little bit until the Germans snuffed it out. Well, actually, it kind of got snuffed out between the Germans and the Tito trying to take over the republic. So it's a combination of the two that kind of took it out.
Well, it's again, the territory that the Chetniks, the Serbs, or the Yugoslav army controlled, it can't be called the republic, properly speaking.
Yeah, so what did they call? That's the term I'm looking for. They called it something else.
Liberated territory.
Liberated territory, okay, because the republic would be a communist thing, where liberated territory would be like the Serbians regaining control of their space and kicking the Axis out, but it's not a republic. It's just, liberated territory. Okay, that's good. But that would have been like Somalia and around there, I guess, initially.
Yes. Okay, well, the problem is, can I find you a map? Let me see.
That's a good one.
Yeah, this is the Chetnik territory.
Yeah, okay.
And of course, even this map is not accurate.
I didn't realize the Chetniks were that far into Croatia, but I guess it makes sense because there's a lot of Serbians there, so why wouldn't they be up there?
Exactly. So this is the of course, maybe the communists would dispute the map on Montenegro.
Yeah.
I don't really care. There's some
Yeah.
probably Chetnik territories that are not shown on the map.
Right.
Doesn't matter. The Soviet Užice Republic would be in this space here, if you can see where I'm circling with the mouse.
Yeah, so basically the far eastern, well, not the far eastern blue spots, but the ones that are all kind of connected, because you got some ones that are way east that are disconnected, but those are occupied by probably Bulgarians and Germans at this point, right? The ones that are right along the border with, is that Romania there, or is that Hungary?
That over that is Romania.
Okay.
But this part here, which is here in between these Chetnik territories, is the communist territory. This is where Tito was originally.
Oh, and then you start having mountains, like right here is still kind of plains right there.
It's mountains. And also, then further on to the west, you have communist territories.
Oh, yeah, because once you get around Slovakia and up there, or Slovenia, it becomes way more communist.
Well, basically, when you get to the most western Serbian territories like Lika, Banja, and Kordun also, this is where communist support was biggest. So in terms of the other map, the game map, this would be a partisan held territory.
Well, yeah, that's where you had your red pieces at, because there were like red pieces in that one, and they went a little further west as well. So you had like red units in those spaces up there. Oh, okay. So they basically, at this point, they've been kind of like sent to the four winds, more or less. So I think the Germans just kind of broke up the initial liberated territory in the Republic, and then I don't think they really stomped them out. Yeah, completely. So they just kind of dispersed them, and they kind of spread wherever they were going to spread to.
Well, what happened was, like, Tito was in near this city of Užice, this by the end of 1941. So this would be his territory. The other territories would be Chetnik, and also there will be some of his units here in Montenegro also. Right. So what happens is Germans come in, the Chetniks mostly disperse. They're not destroyed, but they disperse. And they will be reorganizing themselves later on. The partisan units are partially destroyed and partially dispersed back to Montenegro and Eastern Bosnia. So from there on, here in this territory between Montenegro, Eastern Bosnia, and Northern Herzegovina, and Eastern Herzegovina generally, the partisans tried to make another republic in 1942, in early 1942.
Oh.
However, because they're of course mostly not in the German zone, because German zone is too hot, honestly. They're mostly in the Italian zone. They fight the Chetniks, and according to German reports, collaborate with the Ustashes. But on the other hand, the Chetniks and the Italians together attack them from the direction of Montenegro and Herzegovina, and actually the partisan republic dissolves. It basically falls apart.
Wow, so like both sides were collaborating with the Italians to some degree. Well, I guess the Italians weren't really collaborating with the partisans. The Ustashe were?
Yes. So this is the point. This is the point. There is a realignment. Once the Italians come into the possession of the Adriatic coast, it's simply, this is something that the Italians and the Croats are fighting over.
Right.
And because there's no Yugoslavia currently in existence, the Italians are not enemies of Yugoslavia, but instead become enemies of Croatia.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a realignment. Ustaše,
wow. So there were Croats and Italians fighting each other. Well, actually, it was Croats and Chetniks versus partisans, or I'm sorry, Croats Yeah, Croats and Partisans versus Chetniks and Italians?
Yes.
Or did I get that? Wow.
Yes. Yes. Well, what happens is like as follows. Initially, Ustaše were an Italian proxy.
Right.
However, when the Ustaše become the regime in Croatia, they suddenly become a German proxy, whereas the Italians realign and make a deal with the Serbs.
Oh, that's actually probably why the Serbs were able to last as long as they did, because they had Italian. Oh, you know, that actually makes a lot more sense now, because
Yes.
fast forward just a year, the Italians are on the ropes and the Serbians are still kind of like a force to be reckoned with. But as soon as the Italians go away, well, pretty much the Serbs go away as well, because, well, that's, you know, we're about a year out from that discussion, but that's pretty much also when the Western Allies switched support from the Chetniks to the Partisans. Oh, that actually makes a lot more sense now.
Well, it depends. The Italian situation is very complicated, but when you go down to it, yes, there is a there is an alignment of interest between the Italians and the Serbs, and obviously an alignment of interest between the Croats and the Germans. Now,
oh, interesting. And then a slight alliance between the Partisans and the Croats. A slight
exactly.
One.
It depends. This is something that is complete anathema to both communists and of course nationalist or pro-Ustaše Croats. But from looking from the Serbian perspective, it's like, you know, they cooperated. You know, even if they did not have a written signed, you know, cooperation agreement, it still looks like they are, you know, acting hand in glove between themselves.
I mean, the bottom line is that the Serbs are able to thrive to a degree because the Italians aren't trying to drive them out all the time. So they kind of have this agreement. So long as the Chetniks aren't actively usurping the Italian control, then the Italians just let them kind of hang out because they're not really bothering them too much. As opposed to Italians versus the Croats really want the Italian territory. So they're actually actively fighting each other because the Croats really want the space that the Italians are in, which, of course, they pick up like a year and a half down the road, but that's further out than we're at right now.
They can't, the Ustaše cannot openly fight the Italians.
No. But they can kind of like sneakily and do things by the side and probably kind of encourage the Partisans to go fight the Italians. Oh, this actually makes a lot more sense because at this point the Germans are really leaning into their big offenses in Africa and Russia, and I don't think they're really paying a whole lot of attention to Yugoslavia at this particular point.
At this point, they're trying to do their Vietnamization tactics. So what happens?
How do you interpret that? I'm curious to see what you think Vietnamization is and how it applies here.
Well, they are relying on local resources.
Okay.
So what happens is as follows. You have the Chetnik problem and the Serb problem, and you got the communist and the partisan problem.
Right.
You have different tools to deal with both. First of all, you have the Chetniks in Serbia with Mihailovic, and then you have the Chetniks in Croatia. The Chetniks in Serbia are your probably the most deadliest enemy.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, and this is again corroborated by what Himmler said and so on and so forth.
Oh, okay.
The Chetniks in Serbia are, you know, actively working to undermine you and sabotaging you in a very delicate territory. So what you want to do is crush them. And you shoot a lot of people.
Work in their part right here, because I think a lot of railroads go through there, right?
Yes.
Where Mihailovic is. So his insurgency campaign, or his not insurgency, his sabotage campaign is more effective here because there's more targets in this area.
Yes, this is a very sensitive railway line going.
Oh my gosh! Yeah,
that's far down as Greece. Yeah.
Doesn't that go all the way to Salonika?
Yes. And
But
they're on.
Salonika's in Greece. It's not in Yugoslavia at this point, right?
Exactly. It was never in Yugoslavia. Yeah.
Well, I think of, oh, that's true. I guess it never was. I'm thinking of the point that, well, now I'm going backwards in time, but the point where the Turks had all that, and there was like a little point where Salonika was going back and forth, I guess, between Bulgaria and Greece, but it ended up in Greek hands, right? At this point?
Yes. Yes.
But it's a major port, right? Isn't it like the biggest port right there?
It's the biggest port. It's the most important port. It was actually something that Hitler wanted to induce the Yugoslav government, to give them Salonika in order for them to join the Axis Pact.
Oh, wow. That would have been some really contentious thing because Salonika is like it's a gem right there. It's kind of like the piece of terrain to hold right there in that area.
I think you're right. It's probably the most important real estate in this part of the Balkans.
Oh, well, absolutely, because it's a major port and then all your railways go through there. And then you also have like railway traffic. I'm assuming they shipped all the stuff from Ploesti up the river, but you'd also have like a rail line backup that would pretty much connect to Salonika right here. So this whole area from Salonika to Belgrade is like great territory for sabotage campaigns.
Yes, it is.
In fact, that's probably how Mikhailovich got a lot of attention because he was probably fairly effective at some point, I would imagine.
Indeed. The point being is that what happens now is there are still 3 divisions directed against Mikhailovich.
Oh, really?
However,
these are second tier at this point, right?
No.
Oh,
the two second-tier divisions, and there is an additional division recruited from Germans living in Yugoslavia. It is called the the Prince Eugen division or Prince Eugen. I don't know what.
I think it's
Yeah.
well, I don't know how they pronounce it, probably like Eugen or something, but Prince Eugen. So these guys were from that part of territory the Germans was. I forgot the name of it, but it's like way north here. It's like north of Belgrade, right? Where all the Germans are.
Exactly. And this is an SS division, obviously. And this is a full-strength division, 20,000 men. And this division was organized to keep hold of southern Serbia. And this division goes into a Operation Kopaonik, which is specifically meant to target a Mihailovich commander.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because at this point he was like their #1 target right now.
Yeah. Well, Mihailovich himself was obviously a hunted man.
Right.
This operation, however, this specific operation, however, was against one of his commanders. And it was, of course, unsuccessful. One of his core commanders.
So was it the commander in the Bosnia area or commander in the Croatian area?
Let me show you. It's commander in the Serb area.
Okay.
And let me find you this guy. So this will be a shameless plug-in for the cards.
Oh no, that's fine. So Dragutin Keserovic?
Exactly. And he commands the Rasina Corps, which is Chetnik corps are equivalent to partisan divisions, and both are can be equivalent to either normal battalions or regiments or brigades, I guess.
Well, so how many people were in it? Because a normal division is 15,000.
No way.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah. So honestly, I don't think partisan divisions went below 1,000 unless they were had heavy casualties. Chetnik corps could go below 1,000, but they could also go, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000.
Oh yeah, you're pretty much at brigade regiment level at that point in like regular armies.
Yeah. So
although, funny enough, the late war partisan divisions probably really were like real division size, but that's a whole different story.
In any case, when you talk about, for instance, partisan divisions or Chetnik corps, which were the operational units in the war, you're talking about realistically when you're talking about any serious units which are used for main operations, you're talking about basically brigade size.
Yeah, so 5,000-ish, probably.
No, not really. I don't think that 5,000 would be.
Like
I think that.
Maybe?
3 to 4 on the better ones.
Okay, well, that's pretty much Western Allied brigade size or like a German brigade size. I don't know what the Russian equivalent of that would be because the Russians had different sizes, but yeah, it's a brigade level for Western Allied size units.
Yeah, something like that. So,
Yeah.
just so you have an idea. So,
Okay.
for instance, the German second tier divisions had like 8 to 10,000 people, while the first tier divisions had 15 to 20. I think that.
So did the Prince Eugen division pretty much stay in Yugoslavia during the whole war? Because
Exactly, yes.
That's what
Yes.
I thought. Because somebody actually gave me a book on that unit specifically, and it seemed like they fought in all the campaigns that took place in Yugoslavia, whereas the other units should have been a rotating list, I would guess. They kind of pulling in and out depending upon the operational circumstances.
Well, it depends. They did not participate in the operations that took place during 1941. Their first operation was here in this zone of this mountain here called Kopaonik.
Oh.
So which was directed against this guy, and this first operation was not successful. They didn't manage to catch him or to destroy his unit.
Well, that's like some awful terrain to be fighting in because that's pretty mountainous right there, right?
Exactly, and they are people who live in the plains. Banat, above Belgrade, is a plain country. It's like flat country.
Okay.
So they were not exactly, how should I describe it? They were not the best people for it. Ultimately, of course, they were a very dangerous anti-guerrilla formation. But then again, it's anti-guerrilla formation. It's not a frontline first, Eastern Front formation, which would obviously need to be
it's just
very
funny
serious.
how these operations require completely different kinds of units because a unit that's really good at guerrillas isn't going to be any good at like fighting a set piece battle. And the reverse, if you're a good unit for fighting at Kursk, you're not going to be very good for fighting in the mountains of Montenegro. That's not going to work. In fact,
exactly.
You can't really use tanks in the mountains. You can't bring these tigers and panthers into the mountains because they're going to get smoked. They can't do it.
They can't really pass.
No.
They're too big. There are no roads for them.
No, there isn't. You actually have to have the small tanks. In fact, all the pictures that I saw of these guys fighting, they always had like the Panzer 38s they captured from the Czechs or the French S-35s that they captured during the French campaign. They didn't even have any frontline German armor out here.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if we're talking seriously about the war in Yugoslavia, this is something that really needs to be mentioned because
absolutely,
you get the wrong idea. These units simply are not that fabulous, and they can't be because you need your best units on your most important fronts, and obviously you need to have a different set of skills. However, there is one elite unit that operated in Yugoslavia, which was very much engaged in trying to hunt down and find Mihailovic, and this is the Brandenburg Division.
Ooh.
But this is the German Special Forces.
What's the name of it?
Brandenburg Division.
Brandenburg?
Brandenburg, yeah.
Oh, I have not heard of these guys. Okay, that's a new one. You got me on this, Andrea.
Check them up. I mean, they were in Yugoslavia trying to hunt down Mihailovic in 1942, 1943. So what happens is Mihailovic is under severe pressure personally.
Sure.
He's constantly being hunted, and however, he does manage to reorganize his forces. They manage to perform various successful sabotages, and simply he does try to bring his organization from the ground up. The problem is that Germans are actively hunting them.
Yeah.
In 1942, it seems that they may have shot almost the same number of people as in 1941, perhaps even more.
Oh.
So
Well, I
there
don't
is
really
there
do
is
a
a
lot
severe,
of rebellion. Oh boy.
there is a severe crackdown against Mihailovic.
Oh wow. So this is actually, yeah, because Tito's kind of a bit player at this point. So Mihailovic is like the number one target. He's the one guy you can point to and say, yeah, we want to get that guy. This is probably the most interesting part of the whole history, is how from like this point where Mihailovic is like the number one target to like a year and a half from now, where all of a sudden they've almost forgotten about him at this point because Tito's become like way more powerful. So something happened in this year and a half to completely flip the script on what's going on here, which I guess is what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to mystify it. Tito got Western Allied support. And this basically, of course, painted a target on his back also. And now he would be the one that is being hunted down and almost killed.
Oh,
but that's
like as soon as the Allies kind of, geez, I keep jumping forward again, but as soon as the Allies start flipping support, then they kind of change focus to Tito instead of Mihailovic. But right now, well, I don't know if the Allies are really doing a ton at this point. I think they probably just started, maybe.
The Allies, what is important about the Allied support, it's which is also featured in the game. The Allied support is two-pronged. One thing is the propaganda value of Allied and in particular Western Allied support.
Right.
This is huge. And in 1942, Mihailovic has that propaganda support, and it's very important for him.
Yeah, it is.
However, what he doesn't have is actual tangible support.
Yeah, I don't think, well, they weren't really in a position to help him out a whole lot at this point because they were, pretty much still dealing with the Germans, who are big presence in North Africa at this point. And that's kind of where their focus was North Africa, not Yugoslavia.
Exactly. So at this point, this is 1942, and this is a legitimate, observation of what you noted. In this point, however, they send him, for instance, money.
Okay.
And also what is very interesting, this money includes millions of Italian lira.
That's curious.
Yeah, it is. It is. It sheds a whole new light on the collaboration accusations and things like that.
Yeah, so basically it implies that, well, here's the money, you can buy stuff from Italy. Oh boy.
Anyways, then we go into this mid-region where Tito is kicked out and his forces are basically destroyed. However, at the same token, the Serbs are also pretty much brutally crushed in Eastern Bosnia, and their Dangic falls. He is also captured. He is captured by the Germans, and his troops are destroyed. Okay. And what happens here is that ultimately the Serbs and the Croats make a truce. So this is not a relation that Serbs and the Italians have. This is basically a truce. So obviously, when we talk about the Chetniks, they are a Serb protection unit. They're a Serb protection force. They're obviously a Serbian army. So obviously, when you're an American army, you would be, if there was any danger, first trying to protect the American civilians. That's the point of the whole army. If it's not protecting the people, then what is it good for? Say this is the big deal about Chetniks, is they can be blackmailed.
Oh.
Tito can't be blackmailed. He doesn't care. But if you're a Chetnik commander, you very much can be blackmailed.
Oh, yeah.
Because
your point, because they're basically, the Chetniks are tied to like population centers, whereas Tito really isn't. So like you could pretty much convince the Chetniks to kind of do something in exchange for like, well, I won't blow up your village if you don't mess with me. Whereas you can't really cut this deal with Tito because Tito doesn't care about the population center. So he's going to do whatever he wants to do. Is that
exactly?
Okay, good.
So this this would be one line of reasoning why the Western allies would be supporting Tito. Of course, this is how can I put it lightly? This is a highly Machiavellian and a disgusting way of looking at things. But again, let's not have any wrong ideas about the Western allies as the good guys. We can put that aside, definitely. So this would be one line of reasoning why Tito would be looking as a better bet to anybody wanting to stir up trouble in Yugoslavia and stir up trouble to the Germans, because he doesn't have a problem with civilian casualties. Chetniks do.
Yeah, they do.
So what happens is the Chetnik forces basically make truces with the Croats, with their home guards, and the liberated Chetnik territories are basically left as is.
Okay.
So
you're talking about the ones that are in the Italian and Croat zone, though, because the German ones were snuffed out, weren't they?
Okay, so this is Croatia.
Yeah,
in Serbia, there can't be any liberated zones.
Right, there cannot be.
The Germans will not tolerate this.
No, but the Italian Croats are okay with it, I guess.
Well, the Croats, the Italians are kind of fine with it because they can make deals with the Chetniks, and they can use the Chetniks to kick out Croats and potentially to stir up trouble so they can take over a bigger part of Croatia. And also because the Chetniks can kick out the partisans and just leave the Italians be. Okay, so there's a lot of things that the Chetnik alliance can bring to the Italian table. As far as the Croats go, their state is basically in a situation of complete collapse.
Yeah,
there are revolts everywhere. So ultimately, the Germans are looking over their shoulder, and I guess what they would be saying is that, okay, you need to, calm the F down. You need to really, control your people and control the massacres. And as far as the Chetniks go, we can deal with them somehow.
Yeah.
So, make a deal and, just make it go away.
Oh, interesting. But the very thing that the Croats were doing pretty much guaranteed there was going to be more revolts, because you're always going to have revolts if you just start massacring people. That's how it works.
Unless you massacre everybody.
Yeah, and then you won't have, you're super effective. But you don't have anything to rule. You're not ruling anything. You're ruling a graveyard, that's it.
Well, if you're a Stasha, you don't really care, do you?
They didn't seem to care much, because they were just willy-nilly wrecking stuff all the time.
Yeah. So this is for the Serbs. So in terms of the Serbs, for instance, in particular, those Serbs which are isolated, like Serbs in the Dinara province, they have a very strong interest to get by with anybody which would leave them alone and help them to survive.
Yeah.
Ultimately, in this calculus, the partisans are basically as dangerous as the Ustaše. And for the following reason. The partisan territories are off limits. The partisan deals with either the Germans, the Ustaše, or things like that. They are done by Tito. Mostly. Not necessarily, but mostly. For instance, in Slovenia, you had, local truces between the partisans and the Germans. But the local partisans are not that free to conduct their own business. And for instance, the local Chetnik commanders are the ones that make deals with the Croats, not Mihailovic. Because ultimately, he doesn't want to make any kind of deals with anybody, because this would look bad.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Tito does make clandestine deals, but this is also specific and in specific situations and for specific purposes. None of those purposes seem to be linked to protection of the civilians.
Oh, they're really more just about his group surviving in any form at all.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, it has absolutely nothing to do with civilians.
Yeah. So when he makes deals with Germans, those deals are intended for the partisans themselves to survive. You know, for the Germans to leave him off the hook, or potentially even to make a deal with the Germans against the Western allies. So ultimately, with the purpose of the communist partisan interest. Well, Chetniks, of course, both act in their interest because they want to survive, but also in the interest of the Serb population, which they want to, you know, with which they live, which is their population.
Because Tito didn't really have a population base per se. I mean, obviously he had supporters, but they were probably just people running away from all the other issues and kind of realized, hey, maybe I'll join up with him and I won't get smoked by whoever I'm going to get smoked by, mostly the Croats. But, you know, I'm assuming the Italians are prompted into action on occasion. Of course, the Germans are really effective in their zones. Psst.
Yeah, so what happens now is that Tito simply finds out that his strongest support actually comes from the Krajina region.
Oh, interesting.
And this is the region that is the worst hit by the Ustaše, meaning that this is the region where there is the most destruction done by the Ustaše and where's the most dislocation done by the Ustaše, and the partisans are able to capitalize on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so like this, David Martin said, a intact village helps Mihailovic. A burned down village helps Tito. So he's very astute in this observation.
So we kind of go back to the original idea. The Croats kind of really jumpstart all this sort of thing because they're busy wrecking everything, and when they wreck things, they basically help Tito out.
Yes. Well, which is also a Croat. So there you go. On the other hand, for instance, if the Croats did not do what they did, Tito would disappear by now.
Yeah, there's a good chance because he wouldn't have any support. I mean, who would care about what he's doing? I don't imagine basically the Yugoslavians were interested in communism initially at all.
There's some they are, but you know, the Yugoslavs are mostly farmers, peasants, and communism is not a big deal with peasants, you know, and farmers. I mean, you have your own land, and you don't really care about this, you know, stuff.
You don't really care about any government, really, per se. Anything that messes with you, that's all you want. You just don't want the government screwing with your farming.
Yeah, you're very conservative if you're a farmer. And so what happens? Yeah. Also, what happens is Tito survives also because of one reason, and that is that the Italians mostly leave their garrisons and concentrate on the coast.
Oh, they don't even do anything inland, huh? Don't they occupy? Well, there's not really a lot of cities there to occupy, though. There is. There not major cities.
Well, yes, Tito ultimately manages to make a Bihac Republic, a huge territory, which is liberated territory, mostly in the Italian zone. And obviously he manages to do this because this territory is it's not prime real estate.
No, nobody really cares for the most part. There's no mines on there. There's no cities there. There's probably not really a whole lot of, there should be some traffic, but not a ton.
Yeah, exactly. This is not a big deal, but this territory, but he manages to simply make a huge swath of territory that is that is communist controlled and considered liberated, of course, because there are no Germans there.
Yeah, they're not coming anytime soon either. They're going to probably pressure the Italians and Croats to deal with the mess, and the Italians and Croats aren't really dealing with the mess. So
exactly, the Italians have retreated to the coast, while the Germans note that the Croat garrisons are mostly used for partisan armament. So the Croat garrisons quickly surrender and give their arms to the partisans.
Oh, so they're actually duking it out with the. Well, I guess the Croats didn't really have much of a force at this point, though, really, because I don't think they got really militarized until probably late 42, early 43, right? Like when the
On
Germans.
paper, on
Yeah.
paper or realistically?
Well, realistically, because I don't think they had a real military at all until like 43 or so, right?
I think that the Croat forces were probably second line compared to the Chetniks and the Partisans.
Yeah,
In
but
terms of paper strength, however, Croat forces were huge.
well, yeah, but we all
But-
know it doesn't matter because they weren't really very effective.
Yeah, you have some Ustašian units which are considered crack units, but as a whole, and also there is this huge issue of whether partisans and how much the partisans or how much Tito collaborated with the Croats, meaning the Croat Ustaše and the Croats there is the Ustaše and there is the Croat army, which is the home guards. So because obviously the Croat garrisons would not be very much keen to fight against the partisans.
Yeah,
some Ustaše garrisons might, but generally the Croat, militia or home guard garrisons are not very keen to fight against the partisans, and the partisans are not very brutal towards them. They make nice both sides. So the huge accusation, the huge part of the accusation against the partisans on collaborating with the Croats is also based on this, that the Croat garrisons are not very keen to fight against the partisans, and also the partisans are, just disarming them and, okay, you can go home now.
Oh, so they weren't really fighting anyways. They just took their weapons.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas when the Chetniks come in and destroy, the Croat garrisons, it's not very nice.
No, but actually, I could kind of see why that happens, because the Croats were specifically targeting Serbs initially. Well, that's what they were really doing. So when the Serbs could come in and do something about it, they would probably reciprocate against the Croats and kind of make this thing even flare up even worse than it was already, because the Serbs have to keep the population centers alive. They have to keep them from harm.
There's simply this problem. You have a lot of people that have lost somebody, or which know about the massacres, or whose families were destroyed, or
right.
And you now have to keep discipline and prevent them from killing other civilians.
Yeah. Good luck with that. That's kind of not how that works.
So this is well, it's not an unsolvable problem for Chetniks. You can always use Serbian units and not use the local units and things like that. But again, units can go away, and there's still locals which are thirsty for revenge. For the partisans, they solved by being brutal towards the Serbs. And well, actually, it's very strange when you look at it, but it is what it is. It seems that the partisans directed the Serbs to fight the Serbs and to direct their brutality against the other Serbs. And they were very keen to assure that the Muslims and Croats would be well treated.
Yeah, so now it looks like Serbians are fighting each other, where actually it's Tito kind of saying, hey, you guys go fight those guys. We don't really care what you do. But now it looks like the Serbians are just fighting each other, and a lot of these guys have probably joined the partisan side because they just really want the violence to stop. They just really kind of don't want all this destruction to go on. Wow, what a mess, man.
Well, look at it this way. If you know about mafia organizations or criminal organizations or things like that, simply you can use the logic that is linked to it, because this is all about power. This is all about grabbing power. You need to utilize every means at your disposal, because ultimately, I guess there is this communist idea or whatever, but this communist idea was linked to the proletariat and the workers versus the bourgeoisie, whereas here in Yugoslavia you just have a bunch of free peasants.
Yeah.
And farmers, and it's completely, I don't know, it makes zero sense. But ultimately, when you strip everything down to it, it's like you want to grab power. So what happens now? Yeah.
Power.
Yeah. So what happens now is that mostly the territories controlled by the Chetniks are now mostly out of bounds for Ustaše.
Oh.
So these territories are now territories where Ustaše cannot come in.
Interesting.
They try occasionally, but it doesn't really work. This was done under the agreement that these Chetnik territories would not be very active against the Germans in the Axis. So there is a truce involved, which leaves
Serbians. That's a good deal.
But it worked for Serbians in Chetnik territories.
Yes.
Serbs in Partisan territories are now fair game.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, they were and they remain fair game. And what happens now is there is a huge crackdown when the Germans come in and assist the local Croats, the Ustaše and the Home Guards, and surround one mountain where partisans are controlling the populace. This is the Kozara mountain.
Oh.
And
where is that?
Kozara. So the casualties are huge. Tens of thousands of Serbs are led off to concentration camps, and a lot of, a majority of them don't come back.
Ooh.
So that's the problem, so that's the problem with the partisans.
Egads. All right. How long have we been talking? I'm not really paying attention to the clock. I'm just curious.
Okay, 2 minutes more. So,
okay, go ahead.
What happens now is that during 1942, because the Italians have retreated to the coast, and there is obviously no Germans in the Italian zone, and
kept like a partisan hotbed of activity then.
Exactly. So the partisans managed to liberate a huge swath of territory.
This must have been about the time that the British first started sending their SAS guys in there, because now that kind of lines up with the reports they were writing.
No, actually not.
Oh, not yet? Not yet. Like 43?
43. Okay. Actually, they sent several missions to Mihailovic, and one mission got derailed and got to Tito, and this mission was killed. Everybody was killed. There is some back and forth, whether the partisans killed them or the Chetniks killed them. You can believe what you want to believe. It's, but in any case, the dedicated partisan missions to the partisans, I think they only come in 1943.
Okay.
So there is a huge liberated territory by the Tito, by the partisans. Of course, this is not prime real estate, as you mentioned earlier, but it's still a big territory.
Yeah. So
at this point, and we're ending with 1942. At this point, this territory attracts the attention of a very, attracts a very unwanted attention from the Germans.
Oh, so this would actually be about the time that the Germans actually start having combined operations with whoever will come with them outside of their normal territories, right?
Well, the Germans have already come into Axis Croatia in order to quell the rebellions.
Right.
So this is the time when the Germans will start coming into the Italian zone. Because look at it just look at it from the perspective of the Germans. First of all, the Italian zone is a complete mess.
Yeah, it is.
You got the communists on one side, and you also got the Chetniks. Now, supposedly these Chetniks cooperate with the Italians, but as a German, that the Chetniks are controlled by Mihailovic, who is a friend of the British.
Yes.
That's one thing. The other thing is that the Italians have, left all their territories and left the hinterland completely barren. So, the guerrillas can run free.
Oh, no, there's no Axis troops there at all.
Yeah. And also, that basically you consider some of the Italian commanders, if you're a German, if you're the big guy from Berlin, you consider some of the Italian commanders as open collaborators with the Allies.
Well, and yeah, if you could, it looks
they
that
work
way.
with the Chetniks. Yeah, they work with the Chetniks. They're not helping you out. They don't even crush the partisans, and they even protect some Jews. So ultimately,
that's like everything,
ultimately the Germans decide everything's got to go. We have to come in and kill everybody.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good stopping point right there, because that's a really big transition right at that point. Oh, this is very good. Okay, well, this is helping. It's making things make more sense for me too. So it's good that we're spending the time talking about this stuff, because it's I see why nobody's really done much work on it from a Western perspective, because it's all just so confusing. It's kind of hard to know where to even start anything. That was great. That was awesome. That was a good one.
Thanks a lot, and thank you for your time and
Sure.
for your input. It's just that I don't know. I mean, it's highly convoluted. It's difficult even for people here to wrap their heads around what happened. And but anyways,
just because it's convoluted doesn't mean it shouldn't be examined. In fact, that means it probably should be examined more to figure out why it's so convoluted.
Exactly. And of course, people.
We'll talk next week.
All the best. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.